Every evening around 5:00 p.m., the road back home turned golden with sunlight and memories. The father's old sedan would glide along that familiar route, windows slightly down to let in the crisp air, while music from the radio filled the quiet spaces between their conversations. It was a simple routine, a ritual they both looked forward to. The father, whose days were often long and filled with hard work, found peace in those 30 minutes with his son. The boy, just 9, with a backpack full of crumpled papers and a head full of stories, always had something to say. That road, lined with crooked trees and worn-out signs, became their daily escape from the world. On this particular day, the sun was hiding behind thick clouds and the wind whispered of rain. The boy sat in the front seat, kicking his small feet under the glove box, animatedly talking about a drawing he made in art class. A picture of a lion with wings, rescuing other animals from a storm. He turned to his father with bright eyes. "Do you think lions can be heroes, Dad?" His father chuckled. "Maybe not in real life, buddy, but in your world, anything's possible." They both laughed, the kind of laugh that melts the noise of the world around you. Outside, the road stretched ahead, quiet and mostly empty, just a few cars passing now and then. Familiarity made the journey feel safe, predictable. But as they neared the old gas station that hadn't worked in years, the boy noticed something, or rather, someone. A man, soaked head to toe, was standing at the edge of the road. His cart, a rusty old metal thing filled with bags, had tipped, its contents spilling onto the wet dirt. The man wasn't moving much, just standing there, arms wrapped around himself, head lowered. People drove past him like he didn't exist. "Dad," the boy said, his voice uncertain, "that man looks hurt." The father glanced over briefly, then back at the road. "Yeah, I saw him. Should we stop?" The father didn't answer right away. His hands tightened just a little on the steering wheel. He looked into the rearview mirror, watching a car zoom past without slowing down. "I don't know, son," he said finally. "Maybe someone else will." The boy turned in his seat, watching the man grow smaller in the distance behind them. But no one else is. The silence that followed was thick. The car continued rolling forward, its wipers now sweeping away the first signs of rain. The father's eyes flicked between the road and his son. That face, innocent, full of questions, full of trust, was waiting. Waiting not just for an answer, but for a reason, for a lesson. A half-mile passed, then the father exhaled, slow and deep. He reached over and turned off the music. "You're right," he said. The boy looked up. "What? We should stop." With that, the father slowed the car, pulled into a small gravel patch by the road, and made a U-turn back toward the man. The boy's heart thudded with something he didn't fully understand. Something between fear and pride. As they approached the spot again, the man hadn't moved much. Rain now fell more steadily, making thin streams in the dirt. The father parked and stepped out without saying anything else. The boy stayed inside, watching through the glass as his father walked toward the stranger. The wind pushed hard against him. His jacket flapped open as he approached the man, crouched beside the fallen cart, and without hesitation began lifting the bags and setting them upright. The man flinched at first, surprised, unsure. Then slowly he nodded. The two men didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The boy pressed his hands against the window, eyes wide, trying to memorize every second. After a few minutes, the father returned to the car, his jeans wet, his hands dirty. He climbed in and started the engine. Neither of them spoke for a moment. "You helped him," the boy said finally. The father nodded. He needed someone to stop. The boy looked out the window again, the man now far behind them. "I hope I grow up to be like you." The father's eyes softened. "I hope you grow up to be better." And with that, they continued down the road. But something had changed. The routine was the same, the drive was the same, but the world had shifted just a little, because a father had chosen to stop, and a child had chosen to see. The rain came down harder as they turned around and drove slowly back toward the man. It wasn't a storm, not yet, but the kind of steady, soaking rain that worked its way into your clothes, your bones, even your thoughts. The boy leaned forward in his seat, watching the road like something sacred was about to happen. His father said nothing, eyes focused, jaw tight. Maybe he was thinking about the groceries in the back seat, maybe about the mud or the risk or being late. Or maybe, like the boy, he was thinking about the man alone, drenched and ignored by the world. As they neared the spot again, the stranger hadn't moved much. His thin coat clung to his frame, and his shoulders trembled with the cold. The cart beside him was still tilted, half of its contents now soaked or scattered. A few plastic bags flapped weakly in the wind. The man's head stayed low, like he had learned to expect nothing from passing headlights. Just another body in the background. The father slowed the car and pulled onto the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath the tires. He reached into the back seat, grabbed an old umbrella and looked at his son. "Stay here. Lock the doors." The boy nodded but didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on his father's face, looking for fear, hesitation, anything. But the man he looked up to simply opened the door and stepped out, umbrella in hand, as if stepping into duty. The boy watched through the window. He pressed his fingertips to the glass, as though that would bring him closer. His father walked slowly, not wanting to startle the man. The rain ran in sheets across the windshield, blurring the image, but the boy saw enough. He saw his father speak, though he couldn't hear the words. The man didn't answer right away. Then, after a long pause, he seemed to nod, and the two of them bent together to right the cart. There was something about the way his father moved. It wasn't just that he was helping, it was how he helped. With patience, with calm, with care. The cart was old and heavy, its wheels bent, its bags nearly falling apart. But they worked together, one man a stranger, the other a stranger who cared. The boy didn't notice his own breathing had slowed. He didn't notice how quiet the inside of the car had become, how his heart beat louder in the silence. All he saw was the moment. Two people in the rain, one reaching out, the other leaning in. For a child, it was like watching something sacred being written into the world. Eventually, the bags were stacked again. The father took off his coat and handed it to the man, who resisted at first, shaking his head. But the father insisted. It wasn't a grand gesture. It was quiet, natural, like giving water to someone thirsty. The man clutched the coat to his chest and mumbled something that made the father smile. Then the umbrella was passed over too. When his father returned to the car, soaked from head to toe, he didn't say anything right away. He just sat there, breathing, water dripping from his sleeves onto the steering wheel. The boy looked at him, not with confusion but awe. "Are you okay?" the boy asked softly. His father nodded. "Yeah, he just needed a little help." The boy stared out the window again. The man had started moving, slowly pushing his cart along the muddy edge of the road, now shielded by the umbrella and wrapped in the coat. No one else was going to stop, the boy whispered. The father gave a faint smile, starting the engine again. "That's why we did." The drive home was quieter than usual. The music stayed off. The groceries in the back seat remained untouched. The boy didn't go back to talking about his lion drawing or the stormy animal rescue. Instead, he sat still, hands folded in his lap, his thoughts louder than the rain. After a while, he turned to his father. Why didn't the other cars stop? The father glanced over at his son, then back at the road. Sometimes people think someone else will help, sometimes they're scared, sometimes they're just too busy, but you weren't. I almost was. The boy looked down. Then, after a moment, he said, "I'm glad you weren't." His father didn't respond right away. He reached over, gently squeezed the boy's hand and said, "Me too." And just like that, the rain started to ease, the clouds lightened a little, and though the sun hadn't come back, something warmer filled the car, something quiet and invisible, but real. A boy had seen his father stop for a stranger, and he would never forget it, ChatGPT said. The road had turned to soft mud, slick and uneven, as the rain soaked into the earth. The stranger's cart creaked as it moved again, the wheels wobbling and groaning under the weight of damp plastic bags. Some held what looked like clothes, others looked like food, or at least what once had been food, a loaf of bread, soggy and crumbling, a crushed can of beans, a cracked thermos leaking a thin trail of dark liquid. It was clear the man owned little, and even that was falling apart. The boy sat quietly in the car, watching as his father knelt beside the cart, sleeves rolled up, shoes sinking into the wet ground. The stranger stood stiffly, almost frozen, as if unsure whether he should accept the help. His eyes darted toward the boy in the car, then back to the man beside him, then down at his own hands, scarred, dirty, trembling. The father didn't ask many questions. He didn't interrogate the man with the usual "what happened" or "where are you from?" Instead, he asked what mattered. "Can I help you carry this?" The man blinked, nodded slowly, and mumbled, I didn't mean to block the road." "You're not blocking anything," the father said. "We've got time." It was such a simple thing to say, "we've got time," but in those words the man heard something rare: dignity, respect, an offering of presence. The kind of presence few ever gave him anymore. The boy could barely hear their voices, but he could see everything. He saw the way his father lifted one of the heavier bags and tied it tighter, how he bent to pick up a can from the mud and wiped it clean before placing it back into the cart, how he took off his own gloves and handed them to the man, who hesitated for only a second before accepting them, as if the warmth might vanish if he waited too long. Inside the car, the windows began to fog, the warmth from the boy's breath clashing with the chill outside. He drew shapes in the mist, a heart, then a stick figure. Then, without knowing why, he erased them all and just kept watching. The man finally spoke more clearly. "You didn't have to stop." "I know," the father replied. "No one else did." "I know that too." They didn't say much else. The rain lightened as they worked together to repack the cart. With each gesture, the boy saw something deeper than charity. It wasn't pity. His father wasn't doing this because he felt sorry. He was doing it because he saw the man as someone worth stopping for. Someone who mattered. When the cart was upright and the bags secured, the man looked like he might cry. Not with loud sobs, but with that quiet, aching kind of grief that comes from being seen, really seen, after a long time in the shadows. The father walked back to the car, his hands now dark with mud, his shirt clinging to him from the rain. The boy rolled down the window just a crack. "Are you cold, Dad?" he asked, a little. His father replied with a small grin, shaking water from his hair. But not as cold as that man was. He opened the car door and climbed in, breathing deeply, water dripping from his clothes onto the seat. The silence returned, but it was no longer heavy. It was full of unspoken understanding, of questions answered by action, not words. "Why did you give him your gloves?" the boy asked. "My hands will warm up." His father said. His might not have. The boy thought about that. He thought about the way the stranger had looked at his dad and how gently his dad had helped. He thought about how different today felt, how important. "I think you're like my lion drawing," the boy said softly. His father looked over, confused. "You know, the lion with wings, the one who helps everyone." The father smiled. "Maybe, but I don't have wings." "Yes, you do," the boy whispered. "They're just invisible." The father didn't reply. He just reached out, placed his muddy hand gently on his son's shoulder, and gave it a squeeze. Outside the window, the stranger was already walking away, pushing his cart with more ease now, umbrella shielding him from the last drizzle of rain. He didn't turn back, but he didn't need to. Something had passed between them, silent, lasting, and real. And in the back seat of an old car on a muddy road, a boy had just learned what compassion looked like. Not from a book, not from a lesson, but from the man he called Dad. ChatGPT said. Years passed, and with them came change. The boy, once small and full of wonder, grew taller, quieter, more aware of the world's edges. The road he used to travel with his father every afternoon became just another memory, softened by time, but sharpened in the places where it mattered most. Life had moved forward, as it always does, but that one rainy afternoon never left him. He still remembered the man's soaked figure on the roadside, the broken cart, the weight of silence in the car before his father turned around, the way his dad knelt in the mud without hesitation, giving what he had without a trace of pride. That memory became more than a moment, It became a part of him. Now he was 24, rushing through city streets with earbuds in, backpack heavy with deadlines and worries. It was late, and the city had that tired hum it wore after midnight. The sidewalks were slick from a light rain, and the cold wrapped itself around him like a familiar coat. He was exhausted, ready to get home after a long shift at the hospital, mind full of medical charts and missed texts. The world felt big, fast, and merciless. He crossed a side street near the bus stop, head down, when a quiet voice stopped him. "Excuse me." It was soft, almost lost in the noise, but he heard it. He turned his head and saw a woman sitting on the edge of a low brick wall near the curb. Her clothes were mismatched, layered against the cold. A worn blanket was wrapped around her shoulders. Beside her sat a plastic bag filled with what looked like clothes and a half-eaten sandwich wrapped in paper. She wasn't old, but she looked tired in a way that age couldn't explain. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. Do you know when the last bus comes?" she asked. He pulled one earbud out, looked up the street. The sign behind her showed a schedule he had passed 100 times but never read. "I think the last one already left," he said quietly. Her eyes dropped. Oh, he hesitated. The sidewalk called to him. So did his warm apartment, the leftover pasta waiting in the fridge, the bed he hadn't seen in over 16 hours. He could have kept walking. No one would have blamed him, but something in him paused, not a thought. A memory, rain hitting glass, his dad's muddy hands, the words. He needed someone to stop. He stepped closer. "Are you okay? Do you have anywhere to go?" She shook her head quickly, like she didn't want to burden him. "I was gonna catch the bus to the shelter, but I missed it. They don't let people in after 11. I just needed to get there." He looked at the time on his phone. 11:17. He rubbed the back of his neck, thinking. Then, without really deciding, he took off his scarf and held it out to her. "Here, it's warm. You can keep it." She looked at it, stunned. "Are you sure?" "I've got another one," he lied gently. "And I can help you get somewhere safe." He called a rideshare and paid the fare himself, helping her into the back seat and giving the driver the address of a late-night drop-in center 2 neighborhoods away. Before she left, she looked at him with tears in her eyes and said, "People don't usually stop." "I know," he said, "but they should." As the car pulled away, he stood there in the cold, no scarf, the wind biting at his neck. And for a moment, he felt something else entirely, a warmth, a quiet peace that didn't come from being thanked, but from knowing he'd lived the lesson his father once taught him. He walked home in silence, no earbuds now. Just the sound of his own footsteps and the city breathing around him. Later that night, curled in bed under a thin blanket, he found himself staring at the ceiling, remembering that muddy roadside. His dad's face, his own voice, small and full of wonder. "I hope I grow up to be like you." He smiled softly to himself. Maybe, just maybe, he had.